They hit me. Right there. At my brother's birthday party. My father swung a champagne bottle and cracked it against my head because I wouldn't hand over the deed to my $800,000 condo. But that wasn't the worst part. I was already erased. From family photos, from their memories, from their hearts. Hi, I'm Eliza. And I thought silence would keep the peace. But when they tried to steal the home I built from scratch, I froze their accounts. That's when the begging started. What would you do if the people who raised you treated you like a placeholder until they wanted something more? Tell me in the comments, because this story doesn't end the way you think. They had a valet line, not that it should have surprised me. My brother's 40th birthday party looked more like a political fundraiser than a family gathering. String lights floated between olive trees, and the scent of cedar plank salmon lingered in the warm Scottsdale air. Every car parked along the private cul-de-sac shimmered in black or silver. Teslas, Benzes, a lone Jaguar. I pulled up in my Toyota, freshly washed, but still humble, like a library book on a shelf of leather-bound first editions. The valet smiled professionally as I stepped out. My navy dress didn't carry a label, but it was clean, fitted, familiar. The pearl studs in my ears were a graduation gift from Aunt Claire, and I clutched a small gift bag containing a monogrammed pen set for Nathan. He always loved nice pens, said they made people take your signature more seriously. I followed the laughter toward the front porch. Jazz spilled from the speakers like warm syrup, and every surface sparkled. Fairy lights, glass vases, trays of canapes I couldn't name. A young man at a podium held the guest list like a security checkpoint. He smiled when I approached. "Name?" he asked. "Eliza Monroe," I said, adjusting the strap on my bag. He scanned the paper, then paused. "You're listed as a +1. I blinked. "I'm sorry?" He turned the clipboard toward me. There it was, Reynolds family block, a neat column of names. Nathan, Camilla, Robert, Diane. Even cousin Tessa and her 3 kids. At the bottom, +1 guest of family. I swallowed the pinch in my throat. "That's fine," I murmured, offering a smile I kept polished for moments just like this. "Would you like a different tag? I can handwrite." "It's fine," I repeated. He handed me a white badge that said guest, and I pinned it to my dress just over my heart. It pulled the fabric slightly. I adjusted it, then walked inside. The house was transformed. Chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen fireworks, and every table was wrapped in silk. I scanned the seating chart. Table 18 near the back. A small corner tucked behind a pillar, close enough to hear the kitchen door creak open every 3 minutes. My place setting looked like someone gave up halfway through. The silverware sat crooked, the napkin drooped like a wilted bird. I gently tried to fold it back into a swan. The paper-thin linen flapped under the air from the swinging door. I set it down again and reached for the water glass. Half full, room temperature. It tasted like nothing, which was probably the point. From my seat, I could barely see the head table, but I heard everything. Camilla laughed too brightly. Robert's voice boomed over the jazz. Diane floated from guest to guest, saying, "Nathan's our rock," like a politician kissing babies. The slideshow began. Photos of Nathan as a toddler, a little leaguer, a varsity swimmer, shaking hands with the mayor, cutting the ribbon at his architecture firm's new office. Narration by Diane. "Nathan was always special," she cooed from the speakers. "The kind of light you don't teach. You're born with it." Robert's voice followed. "When Nathan was 10, he drew up a floor plan for our garage renovation. Even the contractor was impressed." I smiled faintly. Not once did the slideshow mention the 3 weeks I spent helping him draft that presentation when his laptop crashed. Not the $40,000 I wired to cover his first-year payroll when his firm launched. Not the night I slept in his unfinished showroom so the carpet installer wouldn't bail. Not even a passing photo. I was the invisible ink. Then came a pause. "And now," a voice announced, "a few words from someone very special." The lights shifted. A spotlight swept across the room and landed on me. I froze. People clapped lightly, uncertain. I stood up, still not understanding. I hadn't been asked to speak. No one had warned me. Diane smiled across the room, a little too perfectly. I walked toward the mic. My heels clicked on the marble like a ticking clock. I shaded my eyes from the light and saw Nathan nod, still seated, Camilla's hand on his. I reached the microphone, heart stuttering. No script, no cue cards, just silence. "It's a beautiful night," I began slowly. "And Nathan, you've always had a gift for making rooms brighter. Even as a kid, you—" Diane laughed from her seat. "Oh, honey," she interrupted, turning to the crowd. "Wouldn't it be the perfect gift if she gave them the condo tonight?" The air left the room like someone had cracked a window in winter. My mouth opened, then closed. I wasn't sure I'd heard her right. She kept smiling. "You know, the place in Austin? That sweet little 2-bedroom Eliza has? She's always traveling. It just makes sense." Robert chimed in. "Come on, sweetheart, you're barely there anyway." It wasn't a request. It was a maneuver, framed as generosity, packaged in expectation. I looked at Nathan. He looked at his plate. Camilla didn't move. The crowd shifted. Whispers. Someone coughed. I cleared my throat. "This wasn't disgust," I said softly, not into the mic, just toward Diane. She waved it off. "Don't be dramatic, darling. It's just a symbol of love." Love. That word again, used like a rope. I could have said so much about the loans, the favors, the holidays spent fixing things that weren't mine to fix. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of smile that says, "I see you and I will remember everything." Then I set the mic down gently. It made a soft click against the stand. No applause followed, just the faint hum of jazz, the clink of silverware, and the echo of a swan napkin slowly unfolding at an empty place setting. I tried to leave before the desserts. There was a quiet moment just after the applause had died and people shifted back to their seats. The tension from Diane's little gift suggestion hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed-out candle. I nodded at a few people on my way to the door, hoping to disappear quietly, to reclaim some measure of dignity before the evening soured further. But the clinking of dessert forks, the scent of chocolate ganache, and the low murmur of jazz made everything feel too composed, too choreographed. And this was only the beginning. "Hi, this is Jeanette from Desert View Realty, just confirming your 2 p.m. walkthrough at the condo." The voice on the phone was chipper, like someone who left mint in the guest bathroom and smiled at strangers in grocery aisles. But her words dropped heavy in the quiet kitchen, cutting through the soft hum of my coffee maker. "My what?" I asked, still half listening, half blinking at the cloudy morning outside the window. "Walk through. For the East Sagewood unit, it's scheduled under your name. We'll meet at the gate unless you'd prefer the lockbox access. Co-signer is a Mr. Robert Monroe. Does that ring a bell?" My stomach tightened. "This unit, it's not for sale," I said slowly. A pause. "Oh," she replied, her voice dipping slightly. "It's definitely listed. Title shows under you, but the agent account was verified through dual submission. It's all in order on our end." I didn't submit anything. Another pause. "Would you like to cancel the showing then?" I didn't answer, just ended the call. The line went dead, but the ringing stayed in my ears. I stood there for a long moment, barefoot on cold tile, one hand still resting on the edge of the counter like it could keep me upright. Then I moved, quietly, purposefully. I walked to the front door and knelt beside the lock. Scratches. Fine and shallow, like someone nervous had tried too hard to fit the key. If I hadn't looked for them, I'd have missed it. But I was looking now. My mind flashed back. Westlake the week before. The family dinner. Robert smiling slightly as he handed me my purse. "All your bags look the same," he'd said with a shrug. At the time, I hadn't even flinched. Now, the memory stung like a thorn you didn't realize had embedded itself under the skin. I sat down at the kitchen island, pulled my laptop toward me, and opened a blank email, typed without thinking. Hi, Marlo. We met at the Valley Law Brunch last fall. I hope you remember me. I think my parents are trying to steal my home. I hesitated, then attached PDFs, the title deed, my closing documents, a screenshot of the transfer I made for the down payment years ago, even an old text thread with my mother where she asked if I could cover just one more mortgage cycle while Nathan got on his feet. I reread the email once, then hit send. I sat in silence for almost an hour, waiting for a reply. Then I called a locksmith. He showed up by noon, tall and quiet, with a clipboard in one hand and a steel toolbox in the other. His uniform said Clayton. His manner said he'd seen stranger things than mine. "Looks like someone's been in and out," he said after inspecting the door. "Scratches are new. They didn't know the alignment well. Probably had a copy, but not practice." "You can change everything?" I asked. "Sure can. Want a deadbolt too?" I nodded. "Yes, please. And maybe, show me how to rekey it in case." He didn't ask questions, just did the work, efficient and kind, the air filled with the scent of brass filings and metal polish. When he finished, I thanked him with bottled water and a quiet nod. He left without comment. The place felt different after that, still mine, technically, but the air had shifted, like someone had lit a match and blown it out, leaving just the sulfur behind. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on my back, watching the ceiling fade in and out with every passing headlight outside. The condo used to be my quiet place, my safe, my shell. Now I felt watched, like the walls had been asked to keep secrets behind my back. I turned on my bedside lamp and pulled the laptop close again. Wrote Marlo another email, slower this time. Marlo, just to confirm, I did not list the condo. I did not authorize any walkthrough. They have a key I didn't give. And then I wrote the words I hadn't spoken aloud, not even to myself. "I think my parents are trying to steal my home." I stared at the screen until the cursor blinked itself quiet. Then I hit send. The next morning, Amina stopped by with bagels and that steady calm only she knew how to carry. She didn't ask what was wrong, just toasted one everything and poured coffee into the chipped mug I always kept in the back. When I finally told her, she set her bagel down mid-bite. "You're not staying here alone tonight," she said simply. "I'm fine." "Eliza." Her voice was soft but firm. "This isn't just shady. This is criminal." I didn't argue. I was too tired. The kind of tired that didn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much weight for too long. That evening, I packed a bag and locked the door, my door, with the new key still warm in my palm. At Amina's place, the guest room smelled of linen spray and eucalyptus. A clean towel lay folded at the edge of the bed. I sat down, still wearing the same jeans from earlier, and stared at my phone. One new email. Subject, "Let's talk, Eliza. Love, Mom." I didn't open it. Not yet. I just let the screen dim in my hand as the room around me settled into the silence I had fought too hard to earn. "They never transferred it back to their name," Marlo said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "Technically, you've owned it this whole time." I stared at the document in front of me, my name printed in firm black ink, my signature, familiar but distant. The address, East Maple Drive in Phoenix, etched into a legal timeline I hadn't thought about in years. A single page had quietly preserved something I'd forgotten even belonged to me. I remember the phone call like it happened yesterday. It was late 2010. Robert sounded calm, almost casual. Something about the mortgage company threatening foreclosure. He said the bank was overreacting, that it was just a matter of refinancing paperwork and timing. "It'll be temporary," he assured me. "Just need the loan in your name to get through the red tape. We'll fix it in a few weeks. It's still our home." I didn't argue. I wired the money within the hour. I was living out of a one-bedroom apartment back then, still paying off student loans. But they needed help. And I still believed that helping meant being good. What I didn't know then was that being good in our family was just another way of being erased quietly. Marlo leaned back in his chair, tapping the folder once with the tip of his pen. "You've been the listed owner for over 13 years. They've never filed a transfer, no quitclaim deed, no title update. Technically, they've been living there under assumption, not ownership. The office was quiet. The AC hummed low, pushing back the phoenix heat that rippled just beyond the glass walls. Outside, the sidewalk shimmered in that late June way, softening the edges of every building into a watercolor blur. Inside, it was all clean lines and facts. I exhaled slowly. They've hosted holidays there, put up Christmas lights, held neighborhood fundraisers. Everyone thinks it's theirs. It's a common thing, Marlowe said. Families don't always clean up the paperwork, but you're not required to let it stay that way. I looked at him. What happens if I take it back? He folded his hands. They'll receive a formal notice, delivered by a third party. It's not personal, it's procedural. You're not breaking in with a camera crew. You're closing a chapter with a signature. I sat still for a moment, letting the idea breathe. I don't want to humiliate them, I said. You're not, he replied. You're protecting yourself. I nodded once, then reached for the pen. My signature landed right next to the one from 2010, like a thread finally tying itself off. Marlowe slid the papers into a manila envelope and stood. We'll file this today. Expect formal delivery in 3 business days. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a ping from the Monroe family group chat, a relic of old birthdays, blurry baby photos, and long-forgotten potluck sign-ups. There was a video. The thumbnail showed Robert at the front door in a wrinkled robe, holding a piece of toast. Diane stood just behind him, clutching a mug with her initials etched in gold. The sheriff appeared on screen, envelope in hand. Robert blinked as he opened the door, clearly caught off guard. Diane reached for the document as he skimmed the top. Her face changed first, eyes sharp, spine stiffening. Robert slapped the envelope against the doorframe. Diane opened her mouth to speak, but the footage cut out before any sound played. No captions, no comments. Just 30 seconds of disbelief, documented by Nathan's security camera and forwarded like it was a funny clip. I watched it once, then again, slower. Then I closed the chat and placed my phone face down. There was no anger in me, no satisfaction either. Only a long, quiet ache where loyalty used to live. That night, I drove past the house, not to gloat, but to remember. I parked across the street, didn't get out, just sat there, engine off, watching the front porch flicker in the soft porch light. The shutters needed painting. One of the rose bushes had overgrown the walk. It looked exactly the same. I remembered tying Nathan's shoelaces on those steps one summer before school. I remembered sitting with Diane on that porch swing, eating watermelon and pretending we weren't both holding back tears. The house had held joy once. I didn't imagine that. But you can't live inside memory. You can only live inside what's real. I backed out slowly and didn't look again. Later that evening, as I sorted through unopened mail, my phone buzzed. Camilla. Her message was short. They're saying you need help, that you're unstable. I stood in the kitchen, the fridge humming softly behind me. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. Somewhere, someone else's life moved on, unbothered. I stared at her message for a long time, then typed my reply. Let them say what they want. I kept the receipts. I didn't send anything else. She didn't respond. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she couldn't. And there was something freeing about that. I walked back to the table and picked up the deed Marlowe had printed for me. I slid it into a folder marked personal, then tucked it away into the drawer with my birth certificate and passport. That night, I lay in bed at Amina's place, the soft hum of her ceiling fan lulling me to sleep. For the first time in months, I didn't dream of being chased or cornered or shamed into silence. I just dreamed of a door I had finally locked, one that no one else could enter again without permission. The house echoed now, not with voices, not with laughter or clinking glasses, but with that hollow kind of silence that only arrives when everything has been stripped bare, a silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt erased. I stood in the foyer, keys still in my hand, though the door had long since shut behind me. August heat pressed against the curtained windows, thick and unrelenting, but inside the air was oddly cool, sterile, like the place had been vacuumed of breath. The lemon polish lingered faintly. Diane had always insisted on it, even when no guests were coming over. A home should smell like it's ready to be remembered, she'd say. Funny, given how determined they'd been to forget me. I walked slowly through each room like I was touring a museum of something that never quite included me. The living room was stripped of its framed photos, but I could see the pale outlines on the wall where they once hung. There had been a graduation photo of Nathan, smiling beside the mayor, a vacation photo from Big Bear, a shot of him holding up a little league trophy with Robert kneeling beside him. Nothing of me. Even the family portrait that used to include me, awkward braces, elbow bent too sharply, had been replaced years ago with a cropped version, tighter, cleaner, as if less was more. I wandered into the dining room where holiday tables once groaned under roasts and triple-layer pies. One year, I'd made a centerpiece out of pine cones and fake holly. Diane had smiled, told me I had cute ideas, then swapped it out before guests arrived. I found myself staring at that same dining table now, empty, save for a fine dust film and 2 candle stubs burned down unevenly. Upstairs, Nathan's old room had been cleaned out except for a dusty track metal pinned to the corkboard. My old room was gone, converted into a guest sewing space sometime in 2016. They'd told me about it in passing. You never visit, and we needed storage. I moved down the hall, pausing at the small linen closet. Empty hangers, 1 floral pillowcase folded too crisply. But the cabinet under the stairs, that one stopped me cold. We used to call it the junk nook, the kind of place that collected what people didn't want to look at but weren't ready to throw away. Half-used candles, orphaned game pieces, birthday cards from people who no longer visited. I opened the door slowly. Inside sat one item, a shoebox. It wasn't labeled, just a plain, soft-edged box with faint gray smudges on the lid. I carried it to the bottom stair and sat. My hands didn't shake, but something inside me did. I opened it. The swan napkin sat on top, the same one from Nathan's birthday party, folded poorly, limp, off-center. I remembered adjusting it at table 18, smoothing its crooked wing while laughter floated from the head table. Why had someone saved it? Beneath it, a photograph. I was 8, hair in pigtails, front tooth missing, standing beside my erupting volcano project at the regional science fair. That trophy had sat on my shelf for years until one summer it mysteriously disappeared. Too dusty, Diane had said. Tacky on display. And beneath that photo, a single sheet of white printer paper. No letterhead, no signature, just one sentence. This was never your home anyway. The words sat in the center of the page like a verdict. Cold. Final. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I folded the paper once, pressed the seam flat with my palm, and tucked it back into the box. Sometimes grief doesn't come as a wave. Sometimes it arrives as air you can't quite catch in your lungs. It sits in the chest, still and full, until all you can do is exhale and make room for it. I walked back into the kitchen and set the box on the counter, the same counter where I used to frost cakes, where Diane once asked me if I'd consider working in HR because you're good with people, not numbers. My phone buzzed. It was Thessaly. The message came with no preamble, just a picture. A leather-bound family photo album cracked at the spine, its pages fanned open across her lap. The next image came seconds later, page after page, labeled years, birthdays, Christmases, vacations, and not one photo of me. Not even from when we were little. No Halloween costume, no awkward preteen group shot. No high school grad photo beside the old Ford that Nathan totaled 2 years later. Then came the text. They've been erasing you for years. I didn't blink right away. My eyes just stayed open, burning. So I wasn't just overlooked, I whispered. I was rewritten out. And that's when I realized this house, these walls, this smell of lemon polish and dust, it wasn't just the place I grew up. It was the graveyard of a version of me they never intended to remember. I closed the cabinet door quietly. I picked up the shoebox, turned off the kitchen light, and walked out without touching another thing. I placed the swan napkin gently in the passenger seat of my car, smoothed it with 2 fingers. Then I drove away, and I didn't look back. The morning light came in, slow, stretching across the hardwood floor of my condo like it had nowhere better to be. I stood by the window, one hand wrapped around a warm mug of tea, the other resting gently on the back of a chair. The peace lily sat near the window, leaves reaching slightly toward the sun. Its white bloom had opened the day before, soft and unassuming. In the center of the dining table, the swan napkin remained, creased but intact, its linen edges softened by time. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. January had come in quietly this year. No fireworks, no resolutions scribbled in a journal, just breath, space, and stillness. It was the first time in a long while I didn't feel like I had to hold my shoulders high or explain myself to anyone. The mail had come earlier. A stack of flyers, a utility bill, and a cream-colored envelope addressed in careful cursive. Thessaly. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a baby shower invitation. Tasteful, understated, pale pink watercolor along the edge. At the bottom, in smaller script, she'd written, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how far they went. You deserved better." I stood still for a long time, rereading that line. I didn't feel anger, not anymore. Just the quiet hum of something closing, a lock clicking from the inside. I didn't RSVP. I didn't tear it up either. Instead, I wrote a check to the women's shelter I'd been following since October. In the memo, I wrote, "In honor of a new beginning." Then I set it aside, turned on some soft music, and began preparing dinner. Nothing fancy, just garlic butter pasta and a simple kale salad. I set 2 plates, not from habit, but from intention. I lit a candle in the center of the table and adjusted the napkin swan slightly, just enough to straighten its neck. At 6:15, the doorbell rang. Amina stood on the other side, a bottle of wine in one hand and a tiny potted orchid in the other. "You need more green in here," she said, stepping inside like she belonged, and she did. We ate slowly, letting conversation drift without needing to fill every space. We talked about books, her new job, the last movie we'd both watched and hated for different reasons. I laughed more than I expected to. My chest didn't tighten once. After the plates were cleared and the second glasses of wine were poured, I looked down at the napkin in the middle of the table. "They gave me back everything," I said quietly, "by trying to take it all." Amina nodded, not needing to ask for context. "Sometimes peace isn't what they taught us it was." I smiled. "It's not forgiveness exactly. It's air. Room to breathe." We clinked glasses gently. "To building our own tables," I said, and never begging for a seat again. She stayed a little longer until the candle burned low and the wine began to lull us into soft quiet. When she left, the condo didn't feel empty. It felt held. Later that night, I moved slowly through the apartment, turning off lights, folding the soft throw blanket on the couch. I paused in the kitchen, eyes resting on the swan napkin still centered on the table. I didn't move it. Then, before heading to bed, I lit a new candle. Not for memory, for presence. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place at any table. I'd made my own. The napkin still sits at the center of my table, creased, quiet, and completely mine. Not a trophy, not a memory I need to defend, just a gentle reminder that I no longer wait for invitations to feel whole. Sometimes, peace doesn't arrive through apologies or explanations. It comes when we stop shrinking ourselves to fit spaces that never welcomed us. And when we finally build our own tables, we learn that healing can be quiet and complete. If this story touched something inside you, I'd love to hear how you've reclaimed your own space. Feel free to share your thoughts or simply sit with them like I did.